Most people believe that strength means reacting. Someone criticizes them, they respond immediately. Someone insults them, they fight back. Someone challenges their value, they raise their voice and try to prove themselves. To them, reaction feels like power. It feels like standing up for yourself. It feels like control. But in reality, reaction is often the fastest way to lose control of your life. The moment you react emotionally, you hand over your power to the person who provoked you. You allow them to decide how you feel, how you think, and how you behave. And the truth is, most people spend their entire lives trapped in this cycle. They wake up every day reacting to people, reacting to criticism, reacting to problems, reacting to circumstances. They never stop to realize that every reaction costs energy, every argument drains attention. Every emotional outburst steals focus from the one place where real progress is built, your own growth. Jim Rohn often reminded people that one of the most important skills a person can develop is the ability to govern themselves. Not to govern others, not to control the world, but to control their own response to the world. Because life will always present challenges. People will misunderstand you, some will criticize you unfairly, some will try to provoke you simply because they enjoy the reaction. And if you spend your life reacting to every voice around you, you will never have the discipline required to build something meaningful. The truth is simple but uncomfortable. Not every opinion deserves your attention. Not every criticism deserves your defense. And not every situation deserves your reaction. In fact, some of the most powerful people in the world have learned a lesson that most people never understand. The ability to remain calm when others expect you to react is not weakness. It is discipline, it is control, and more importantly, it is the foundation of long-term success. Because when you stop reacting to everything around you, something remarkable begins to happen. Your energy returns to where it belongs. Your focus sharpens. Your thinking becomes clearer. And for the first time, you begin to realize that the real power in life does not come from dominating every argument. It comes from mastering yourself. The real problem most people face in life is not lack of opportunity. It is not lack of talent. And it is not even lack of intelligence. The real problem is emotional reactivity. Most people are easily triggered. A comment from a coworker ruins their mood. A criticism from a stranger stays in their mind for days. A disagreement turns into an argument that drains their energy and attention. And they never stop to ask a very important question. Why am I reacting so strongly to things that should not control my life in the first place? The answer is uncomfortable, but extremely important to understand. Human beings are wired to seek validation. From childhood, we are trained to look for approval. Approval from parents, approval from teachers, approval from friends. Later in life, this pattern continues with bosses, colleagues, and society. We want to be respected. We want to be understood. And most of all, we want to feel that our voice matters. But this desire for validation becomes dangerous when it controls our behavior. Because the moment your emotional state depends on the opinions of other people, you no longer control your own life. Other people do. Someone criticizes you and suddenly your confidence disappears. Someone questions your decisions and suddenly you feel the need to defend yourself. Someone insults you and suddenly you feel an overwhelming urge to respond. What most people never realize is that these reactions are exactly what keep them trapped. When someone provokes you and you immediately react, they have achieved their goal. They have captured your attention. They have influenced your emotions. And in many cases, they have successfully pulled you into a situation that benefits them far more than it benefits you. This is why emotional discipline is so rare and so powerful. Because very few people develop the ability to pause between stimulus and response. Instead, they operate on impulse. They speak before thinking. They argue before understanding. They react before evaluating whether the situation even deserves their energy. Jim Rohn often emphasized that success is not just about what you do, It is about what you refuse to do. It is about the decisions you make regarding where your energy goes every single day. Because energy is limited, attention is limited, and focus is one of the most valuable resources you possess. Every time you argue with someone who cannot be reasoned with, you lose focus. Every time you try to explain yourself to someone who has already decided to misunderstand you, you lose energy. Every time you react emotionally to criticism that offers no real value, you lose time that could have been invested in your growth. The modern world makes this problem even worse. We live in an environment filled with constant noise, social media arguments, endless opinions, endless criticism, endless comparison. Everyone has something to say and everyone wants to be heard. But very few people take the time to ask whether all of this noise is worth their attention. The truth is, most of it is not. Most of the voices competing for your attention are distractions from the work that truly matters. And the sooner a person understands this, the sooner their life begins to change. Because once you recognize that not every opinion deserves your reaction, you begin to regain control of your focus. You begin to realize that the greatest advantage in a noisy world is the ability to remain calm and selective about where your energy goes. And this realization leads to an important shift in thinking. Instead of asking, how do I respond to everything around me, you begin asking a far more powerful question. What actually deserves my response at all? Jim Rohn often said that one of the most important discoveries a person can make is this: your life is not controlled by what happens to you. Your life is controlled by how you respond to what happens to you. At first glance, this idea sounds simple, almost obvious. But if you observe how most people actually live, you begin to see how rarely it is practiced. Many people believe their circumstances control their future. They blame the economy, their boss, their family, their background, or the people around them. And while these factors can certainly influence a person's path, they do not determine it. What truly determines the direction of your life is the philosophy you adopt about how to respond to challenges. Jim Rohn believed that philosophy is the starting point of every result in life. Your philosophy shapes your attitude. Your attitude shapes your actions. And your actions eventually shape the results you experience. This means that the most powerful change a person can make is not external, it is internal. It is the decision to adopt a philosophy that places responsibility for your response back into your own hands. Consider two people facing the exact same criticism. One reacts immediately. They become defensive. They argue. They try to explain themselves. The entire situation consumes their emotional energy for the rest of the day. The other person pauses. They listen carefully. They evaluate whether the criticism contains something useful. If it does, they learn from it. If it does not, they move forward without allowing it to disrupt their focus. The external situation is identical, but the results are completely different. One person loses control of their emotions. The other maintains control of their direction. Jim Rohn taught that maturity begins when a person stops asking why things are happening to them and begins asking how they are choosing to respond. Because every response is a decision. Even silence is a decision. And in many situations, silence is not avoidance. It is discipline. It is the ability to say to yourself that your energy is too valuable to be spent on every opinion that crosses your path. Many people misunderstand this idea. They believe that remaining calm means accepting poor treatment or allowing others to control the situation. But that is not what discipline means at all. Discipline means choosing the response that moves your life forward rather than the response that satisfies your immediate emotion. It means understanding that your time, attention, and energy are limited resources. And the way you spend those resources determines the direction of your future. Jim Rohn often explained that successful people develop a habit of selective attention. They do not try to respond to everything. They choose carefully what deserves their focus. They invest their emotional energy into learning, improving, and building something meaningful. Instead of fighting every small battle, they concentrate on winning the larger war of personal growth. This philosophy changes the way you see the world. Instead of feeling the need to defend yourself constantly, you begin to recognize that most criticism is temporary. Most arguments are unproductive. Most distractions are simply noise competing for your attention. And once you adopt this philosophy, you begin to experience a quiet kind of confidence. You no longer feel the need to prove yourself in every conversation. You no longer feel pressured to respond to every opinion. Your focus shifts away from reacting to the world and toward building your own path forward. This is where real strength begins to develop. Because true strength is not the ability to overpower others. It is the ability to govern yourself. It is the discipline to remain steady when circumstances become emotional. It is the clarity to stay focused on long-term results instead of short-term reactions. And once a person truly understands this principle, something remarkable begins to happen. The noise of the world loses its influence. The opinions of others lose their power. And for the first time, a person begins to experience what Jim Rohn believed was one of the greatest advantages in life. The advantage of self-mastery. If the principle of self-control is so powerful, then why do most people struggle to apply it? The answer is not because they lack intelligence. It is because they have never trained themselves to manage their emotional impulses. Most people grow up believing that reacting immediately is normal. When they feel angry, they express it. When they feel criticized, they defend themselves. When they feel misunderstood, they argue until someone listens. These behaviors feel natural because they are common. But common behavior does not always produce successful results. In fact, the habits that are most common in society are often the same habits that keep people stuck exactly where they are. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing they must prove themselves in every situation. They feel the need to correct every misunderstanding. They feel the need to respond to every criticism. They feel the need to defend every decision they make. But the truth is, this constant need to explain yourself is exhausting and unnecessary. Not everyone is looking for understanding. Some people are simply looking for a reaction. When you try to explain yourself to someone who has already decided to disagree, you are not solving the problem, you are feeding it. Another reason people fail is that they confuse emotional reaction with strength. They believe that raising their voice means standing their ground. They believe that arguing harder means protecting their reputation. But strength is not measured by the volume of your reaction. Strength is measured by your ability to remain composed when others lose control. Anyone can react when emotions run high. It takes discipline to stay calm when circumstances become difficult. A third reason many people struggle with this principle is the fear of being misunderstood. They worry that if they remain silent, others will think they have nothing to say. They worry that if they do not respond immediately, people will assume they are weak or incapable of defending themselves. But in reality, the opposite is often true. People who speak carefully and selectively are usually perceived as more confident than those who react to everything, because selective response signals control. It signals that a person does not feel pressured to prove themselves in every conversation. Another major reason people fail to practice emotional discipline is the simple habit of distraction. In the modern world, it is incredibly easy to get pulled into endless debates, arguments, and opinions. News, social media, workplace, politics, and everyday conversations constantly compete for your attention. And if you are not careful, your entire day can disappear into responding to things that have nothing to do with your long-term goals. This constant distraction prevents people from focusing on what truly matters. Instead of investing their time in learning, building, improving, or creating, they spend their energy defending themselves against criticism that will not matter a week later. Jim Rohn used to remind his audiences that successful people learn to separate what is urgent from what is important. Urgent situations often demand immediate attention, but important work requires consistent focus. And the problem with reacting emotionally is that it makes everything feel urgent. Every comment feels like it needs a response. Every disagreement feels like it must be resolved immediately. But when everything becomes urgent, nothing meaningful gets accomplished. The people who achieve the greatest success in life learn to resist this pressure. They recognize that their energy must be protected if they want to build something meaningful. Instead of reacting to every situation, they choose their responses carefully. They decide what deserves their attention and what does not. They invest their focus where it produces real progress rather than temporary emotional satisfaction. This shift in thinking separates those who remain stuck in constant reaction from those who move steadily toward growth. Because once you stop trying to win every argument, you gain the time and clarity needed to win something far more valuable, your future. Understanding the problem is important, but understanding the solution is what truly changes a person's life. Jim Rohn believed that progress rarely comes from random effort. It comes from structure. It comes from a clear philosophy followed by consistent habits and practical action. When it comes to mastering your reactions and protecting your focus, there is a simple framework that can guide the process. It is not complicated, but it requires discipline to apply. This framework operates on 3 levels: personal philosophy, daily standards and habits, and intentional action. The first level is personal philosophy. Everything begins here. Your philosophy determines how you interpret the world around you. If your philosophy is built on the idea that every criticism must be answered, then you will spend your life reacting to criticism. If your philosophy is built on the belief that every disagreement must be won, then you will spend your life arguing. But if your philosophy changes, your behavior begins to change as well. The moment you adopt the belief that your energy is limited and valuable, your perspective shifts. You begin to recognize that not every situation deserves your emotional investment. Some situations deserve patience, some deserve observation, and some deserve complete silence. Jim Rohn often explained that the philosophy you adopt acts like a filter. It determines what you allow into your mind and what you ignore. People with a strong philosophy of personal growth filter out distractions that do not serve their future. They are not easily pulled into drama or unnecessary conflict because they understand that their long-term progress matters more than temporary emotional satisfaction. This philosophy allows them to maintain clarity even when the environment around them becomes chaotic. The second level of the framework is standards and habits. Philosophy alone is not enough. A belief becomes powerful only when it is supported by consistent behavior. This means developing habits that reinforce emotional discipline. One of the most important habits is the habit of pause. Instead of reacting immediately to situations, you train yourself to pause before responding. This pause may last only a few seconds, but it creates space between stimulus and response. Within that space, you regain control of your decision. Another important habit is selective attention. Not every message deserves a reply. Not every criticism deserves a defense. Not every disagreement deserves a debate. Successful people develop the ability to evaluate whether a situation deserves their focus before they invest their energy. This habit alone can dramatically increase a person's productivity and peace of mind. A third essential habit is redirecting emotional energy toward growth. When people feel criticized or challenged, their natural reaction is to argue or defend themselves. But disciplined individuals learn to redirect that emotional energy into improvement. Instead of asking, "How do I prove them wrong?" they ask, "How do I become better?" This shift turns criticism into fuel for progress rather than fuel for conflict. The third level of the framework is intentional action and measurement. Philosophy and habits create the foundation, but action determines results. This means applying emotional discipline in real situations. When someone challenges your ideas, you practice listening instead of reacting. When someone offers criticism, you evaluate whether it contains useful information. If it does, you use it to improve. If it does not, you move forward without allowing it to disrupt your focus. Another important action is choosing your battles carefully. Every person faces moments where a response is necessary. Silence does not mean avoiding responsibility. It means choosing wisely when to engage and when to move on. People who master this skill are not passive, they are strategic. They understand that responding to everything reduces their ability to focus on what truly matters. Measurement also plays a role in this process. Personal growth requires awareness. At the end of each day, it can be helpful to reflect on how you responded to challenges. Did you react emotionally or did you remain disciplined? Did you allow distractions to consume your attention, or did you maintain focus on your priorities? These reflections allow a person to gradually strengthen their emotional control over time. When these three levels begin working together, something powerful happens. Your philosophy protects your mindset. Your habits protect your daily behavior. And your actions protect your progress. Instead of being pulled in every direction by the opinions and reactions of others, you begin moving forward with clarity. You become less reactive and more intentional. Your energy becomes concentrated on the work that truly matters. And over time, this disciplined focus produces results that emotional reaction never could. Understanding a principle is valuable, but real change begins when that principle is applied in everyday life. Jim Rohn often reminded people that knowledge without action does not transform anything. Many people understand the importance of emotional control in theory, yet they struggle to apply it in the situations where it matters most. Implementation requires awareness and practice. It requires the willingness to slow down your reactions and choose responses that support your long-term goals instead of your immediate emotions. Consider the workplace, which is one of the most common environments where people lose control of their reactions. A coworker questions your work. A manager criticizes your performance. A colleague takes credit for something you helped build. These situations naturally trigger frustration. The instinctive reaction is to defend yourself immediately or to respond emotionally in order to protect your reputation. But disciplined individuals approach these moments differently. Instead of reacting instantly, they pause. They ask themselves a simple question: what response will move my life forward rather than simply satisfying my emotions right now? Sometimes the answer is to respond calmly with facts. Sometimes the answer is to ask questions and understand the situation better. And sometimes the most productive choice is to remain silent and allow the situation to reveal itself over time. By slowing down their reaction, they prevent temporary frustration from turning into long-term damage. Relationships offer another powerful example of how emotional discipline must be applied. In personal relationships, disagreements are inevitable. People have different perspectives, different expectations, and different emotional responses to challenges. When disagreements appear, many people immediately try to win the argument. They try to prove their point and force the other person to admit they are wrong. But this approach rarely strengthens the relationship. More often, it damages trust and creates unnecessary conflict. Applying the principle of emotional discipline changes the way these moments are handled. Instead of focusing on winning the argument, the focus shifts toward understanding the situation. Listening becomes more important than reacting. Patience becomes more valuable than proving a point. In many cases, the willingness to remain calm and thoughtful during a disagreement leads to solutions that emotional arguments could never produce. Another situation where implementation becomes important is when dealing with criticism. Criticism can appear in many forms. Some criticism is constructive and useful. It reveals weaknesses that we may not see ourselves. Other criticism is simply noise. It comes from people who do not understand our goals or who are projecting their own frustrations. The challenge is learning to distinguish between the two. Emotional reactions often prevent this evaluation from happening. When people feel attacked, they instinctively defend themselves before considering whether the feedback might contain something valuable. Practicing emotional discipline allows a different approach. Instead of reacting defensively, a disciplined individual evaluates the criticism calmly. If it contains truth, they use it to improve their performance. If it does not, they move forward without allowing it to distract them. This approach turns criticism into a tool for growth rather than a source of conflict. Another important aspect of implementation is protecting your focus from constant distractions. The modern world provides endless opportunities to react. News updates, social media discussions, online debates, and public opinions are available every moment of the day. Each of these voices competes for attention. Without discipline, a person can easily spend hours responding to information that has little impact on their future. Successful individuals recognize that attention is one of their most valuable resources. They become selective about what deserves their focus. Instead of reacting to every headline or argument, they concentrate on the activities that actually move their life forward. Learning, building, creating, and improving become priorities, while unnecessary noise gradually loses its influence. Implementation also requires patience. Emotional discipline is not developed in a single day. It is a skill strengthened through repeated practice. At first, it may feel uncomfortable to pause before reacting. You may feel the urge to respond immediately in order to protect your pride. But with practice, the pause becomes natural. Over time, you begin to recognize that many situations which once seemed urgent are actually temporary and unimportant. As this awareness grows, your reactions become calmer and more intentional. The result of this process is a significant shift in personal power. When you learn to manage your responses, you are no longer controlled by the emotional energy of others. Criticism loses its ability to disrupt your focus. Disagreements no longer consume your attention. Instead of reacting constantly, you begin directing your energy toward the work that truly matters. And as Jim Rohn often emphasized, the consistent direction of your energy is what ultimately determines the quality of your life. At some point in life, every person reaches a moment of realization, a moment when they look back at the situations that once consumed their emotions and they begin to see them differently. The arguments that once felt urgent no longer seem important. The criticisms that once felt painful no longer hold the same weight. The opinions that once demanded a response now appear as small distractions along a much larger journey. This shift in perspective is one of the most valuable signs of personal growth, because it means you have begun to understand something that many people never fully grasp. Your peace, your focus, and your direction are far too valuable to be controlled by every voice around you. Jim Rohn often reminded his audiences that life is not determined by the number of challenges you face. Everyone faces challenges. What separates people is how they choose to respond. Some people spend their lives reacting to circumstances. They fight every small battle. They defend themselves in every disagreement. They attempt to correct every misunderstanding. And as a result, their energy becomes scattered in every direction. But others learn a different approach. They learn to guard their energy. They learn to remain calm when situations become emotional. They learn that silence is not weakness, but discipline. Because silence creates space. It creates the ability to think clearly rather than react impulsively. It allows a person to step back from temporary emotions and remember their long-term purpose. When you adopt this discipline, something important begins to change in your life. The noise of the world gradually loses its power over you. Opinions that once felt overwhelming become easier to ignore. Disagreements that once consumed your attention become smaller and less significant. Instead of reacting to everything around you, your attention returns to the work that truly matters. Your goals become clearer. Your priorities become stronger. And your progress becomes more consistent. This is where the real advantage begins to appear. Because most people never learn to control their reactions. They remain caught in a cycle of emotional responses that constantly disrupt their focus. But the person who learns to master their response gains something rare. They gain stability in a world that often feels chaotic. They gain clarity in situations that confuse others. And most importantly, they gain the ability to direct their own energy toward building a meaningful future. So as you move forward, remember this principle: not every voice deserves your attention. Not every criticism deserves your response. And not every situation deserves your emotional energy. The true measure of strength is not how loudly you react when challenged. The true measure of strength is your ability to remain steady when others lose control. Because when you learn to govern your reactions, you begin to govern your life. And once a person gains that level of self-mastery, the path toward growth, success, and fulfillment becomes much clearer.